The recent events in Gaza have once again thrust the Israeli-Palestinian conflict into the global spotlight. The violence, which erupted on October 7, 2023, has led to a spiraling crisis with devastating humanitarian consequences. As both sides engage in fierce fighting, the international community grapples with how to de-escalate the situation and prevent further bloodshed. The UN Security Council remains deeply divided, with the United States blocking a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. This latest eruption of violence is the most severe since the 2014 Gaza war, and it threatens to unravel the fragile peace that has held, however tenuously, in the region. The conflict has been marked by Hamas rocket attacks on Israeli cities and towns, met with swift and forceful Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. Civilian casualties have mounted on both sides, sparking international outrage and condemnation. The situation on the ground remains volatile and unpredictable. The Israeli Defense Forces have launched a ground offensive into Gaza, raising fears of a protracted and bloody conflict. International calls for a ceasefire have gone largely unheeded, with both sides seemingly determined to inflict as much damage as possible on the other. The current crisis underscores the urgent need for a renewed diplomatic effort to address the root causes of the conflict. The two-state solution, long touted as the only viable path to peace, seems more distant than ever. As the violence rages on, the hope for a just and lasting peace for both Israelis and Palestinians hangs precariously in the balance. Understanding the current crisis necessitates a glimpse into the tangled history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The roots of the conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century, with competing claims to the same land. The Zionist movement sought to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, then under Ottoman rule, while the Arab population opposed Jewish immigration and land purchases. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War resulted in the establishment of the State of Israel, but it also displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, creating a refugee crisis that continues to this day. Subsequent wars in 1967 and 1973 further entrenched Israel's control over the West Bank, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights territories that Palestinians claim for their future state. The Oslo Accords, signed in the 90s, raised hopes for a negotiated two-state solution. However, the peace process faltered, hampered by continued violence, settlement expansion in the occupied territories, and a lack of trust between the two sides. The Palestinian Authority, established as an interim governing body, has seen its legitimacy erode over time, while Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by Israel, the United States, and the European Union, gained control of Gaza in 2007. The failure to achieve a lasting peace has perpetuated a cycle of violence and mistrust. The latest escalation is a stark reminder of the unresolved issues at the heart of the conflict: land, security, refugees, and Jerusalem. Until these fundamental issues are addressed, the prospects for a just and lasting peace remain bleak. The most immediate and devastating impact of the conflict is felt by civilians on both sides. Palestinian civilians in Gaza are bearing the brunt of the violence. With limited access to essential supplies and medical care, the humanitarian situation in the densely populated enclave is dire. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and there is a critical shortage of food, water, and medicine. The indiscriminate firing of rockets from Gaza into Israel has also resulted in Israeli civilian casualties and widespread fear and disruption. The constant threat of rocket attacks has forced millions of Israelis to seek shelter, bringing daily life to a standstill. The psychological toll of the conflict, particularly on children, is immeasurable. International humanitarian organizations are struggling to provide aid to those in need. The UN has issued urgent appeals for a humanitarian ceasefire to allow for the delivery of essential supplies and medical evacuations. However, access to Gaza remains restricted, hampering relief efforts. The human cost of this conflict is immeasurable. Behind the statistics lie shattered lives, families torn apart, and a generation scarred by violence and loss. The international community has a moral obligation to alleviate the suffering of civilians and work towards a political solution that ends the violence and addresses the underlying causes of the conflict. In response to the escalating conflict, the international community has shown a mixture of condemnation, calls for restraint, and diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire. The UN Security Council, despite multiple emergency meetings, has been unable to reach a consensus on a resolution due to deep divisions among its permanent members. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has blocked a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire, arguing that it fails to address the need to disarm Hamas. Meanwhile, European leaders have been vocal in urging both sides to de-escalate and return to negotiations, with France taking an active role in diplomatic efforts, leveraging its regional relationships to seek a peaceful resolution. Other nations like Egypt and Qatar have also engaged in mediation, though with little tangible progress so far. The Arab League has condemned Israel's actions in Gaza as war crimes and called for an end to the violence. Yet it remains deeply divided on how to address the conflict, reflecting broader divisions within the Arab world. The international response has been marked by urgency and frustration. While there is widespread agreement on the need for a ceasefire and a return to negotiations, the path to achieving these goals remains elusive, hindered by deep mistrust and complex political dynamics in the region. The ramifications of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict ripple far beyond the immediate region, long being a source of instability in the Middle East, with potential to ignite wider regional conflicts. The current escalation has heightened tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors, notably Lebanon, where Hezbollah has threatened to intervene on behalf of Hamas. This conflict has also sharpened existing geopolitical fault lines, pitting the United States and its Western allies against Russia and China. Russia, maintaining close ties with both Israel and the Palestinians, has proposed a UN-led peacekeeping mission in the region. China, seeking to expand its influence in the Middle East, has positioned itself as an honest broker, advocating for dialogue and a two-state solution. Additionally, the conflict has fueled anti-Semitism and Islamophobia globally, with a rise in hate speech and crimes targeting Jewish and Muslim communities, a worrying trend that necessitates a unified effort from governments and civil society to counter. The interconnected nature of global politics underscores that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict cannot be viewed in isolation. Its escalation risks destabilizing the region, inflaming global tensions, and fueling hatred and division worldwide. As violence persists, the prospects for a just and lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians seem increasingly distant. The two-state solution, once viewed as the most viable path to peace, now appears more elusive than ever. Challenges such as the expansion of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, entrenched divisions within Palestinian society, and deep mistrust between the two sides pose significant obstacles to future negotiations. The international community bears a responsibility to work towards a just and lasting solution, requiring a concerted effort to address the root causes of the conflict, including the occupation, settlements, refugee issues, and the status of Jerusalem. It also demands accountability for both sides' actions and adherence to international law. Achieving lasting peace will necessitate a fundamental shift in political discourse within both Israel and Palestine, promoting dialogue, reconciliation, and mutual understanding, while also addressing underlying socio-economic factors like poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity. The ongoing escalation serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of this enduring conflict. It is imperative for the international community to move beyond mere condemnation and take concrete steps to break the cycle of violence and create conditions for a just and lasting peace. The future of both Israelis and Palestinians hangs in the balance.